Started. Welcome to this morning's Leadership Lounge. This one is driving productivity from afar. So it's all around, particularly now while we're going through everything that's happening with the pandemic and lockdown, about how to keep your teams moving forward, driving productivity and managing remotely. So I'm just going to share my screen and we will go through. Here we go. Good, okay. So, driving productivity from afar. So this is episode 3 of the Leadership Lounge. So far, we've talked about how to keep your employees emotionally healthy, and then we've also looked at kind of keeping a leadership mindset. So now we're driving into productivity. So how to actually keep them going and keep them working and achieving the goals. So we're joined today by Heena, Steve, and Bev. All of them manage huge departments. I'm going to hand over to them in a second to introduce themselves, but I felt that they were actually really fitting for driving productivity because they have huge goals and huge milestones kind of hit on a daily, a weekly and a monthly basis. So it's good for us to learn from them today. So hand it over to Steve. Steve, can you introduce yourself for us, please?
Yep. Good morning, everybody. So just to introduce myself, I've been with Payment Sense coming up to 8 years now. I hold the position of head of sales, head of field sales, that is. I also head up both teleappointing and sales support departments. I manage approximately 300 people across those 3 departments. Breaking that down, in the sales department, I have 10 regional sales managers, approximately 250 sellers. In teleappointing department, I have 4 managers and approximately 30 employed telepointers. And in the sales support department, I have 1 manager and 10 sales support agents. So, as I said, overall I'm responsible for around 300 people. In regards to my background, I've been in senior sales management for 16 years now. Before Payment Sense, I was head of sales for a company called XLN Telecom. This was George Caribbean's last company. So I've known and worked for George now for many years. It was actually George who brought me over to Payment Sense. When I started with Payment Sense in 2012, I came in as a regional manager, a regional sales manager in Northern Ireland. I built that up in a very short period of time. Then in 2014, I led the company sales expansion into Republic of Ireland. At that time, when we went into Republic of Ireland, I received my headship and became head of Ireland. Ireland very quickly became top performing field sales channel in the company. And then not long after that, I was asked to take over head of the South England, which was fairly struggling at that time. Anyway, turned that around fairly quickly. And then not long after that, I was given all of UK and Ireland to manage them. This year, they added the sales support and teleappointing departments under me. So I'm a very busy boy running all of that.
Thank you. Yeah, huge department. So it'll be interesting to hear more from you later on. Heena, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I currently look after the partnership team. So we've just had a transformation of Connect department. So that actually consists of the sales team as well. So it is the partnerships team, the PDM team, the Connect support, inside sales, and within inside sales, we also have the enterprise team as well. I've been with Payment Sense for 11 years. I've been managing pretty much the whole time. I started in sales for around 6 months and I became team manager. I've done various pilots and tried different things out within sales, and now I've just looking after the Connect sales team.
Great, thank you. And Bev?
Yeah, morning everybody. So I'm the customer service manager in Hull. I've got 9 direct reports, 3 of which are furloughed at the moment. And we have in the region of about 70 agents who are active at this moment in time. Fortunately, we have not had to furlough that many people because our customers still want that level of service. So yeah, we are really busy. But I've got 25 years people management experience, mainly in customer service. Although I was a bank manager and ran a debt collection in my previous roles. I started out as a tracing agent working for the Yorkshire Bank, and that meant I had to find people who had absconded from their address. And that meant that I had to ask the customer's neighbours or their employers or even the next of kin where they'd moved on to. And once I'd found the address, I'd contact them about paying their outstanding debt. I once had to contact Vera Duckworth and tracked her down at ITV regarding an outstanding account that she had with us at the bank. And her colourful vocabulary was very, very interesting when I told her why I was calling. So the Yorkshire Bank at the time was bought out by the National Australia Bank, and I was involved there by doing their training and development for all of their agents. And then I moved to Capita, which is one of the biggest outsourcing companies in the UK, and managed a 700 call centre for British Gas. And then I ran the BMW and Audi brands there. I moved to Payment Sense in April 16, and I've just had my 4th anniversary running the team in Hull, which I love. And I can honestly say by far it's the best team that I've ever had in my career. That's me.
That's really lovely. Thanks, Bev. It's so interesting. So you're detective there too. Okay, cool. So just to kind of set the scene as to what we're going to be talking about today and to give you guys some guidance. This image here is actually something that's taken from Forbes. It was in one of their articles last month at the kind of when we first started going into lockdown, and they talked about this whole piece around, is it performance that you value or is it presence that you value as a leader? So when you're working and managing remotely, what is it that you value from your team? And too often people working from home for the first time think that they have to be this kind of body empty, so they have to be glued to their screen for 8 hours a day, and that proves that they're working and they're working hard. And actually what we need to consider is how much time are we actually productive in front of a computer screen, and how much can we get done in a day? It's not just about being present, it's about what you're actually doing and if you're adding value through the work that you're doing. So today's session is going to focus more on how do we get to that performance rather than the presence piece. So there was an interesting study done by a company called Rescue Time, and they looked at workers. They studied about 185 million work hours for people. This is the end of last year. They looked at how productive people actually are in their day. So just to give you some stats from the research they did, they found that workers actually check their email and Slacks every 6 minutes. And they said that a third of the people they were observing actually checked it every 3 minutes. So checking emails and Slacks rather than actually focusing on the project or the piece of work they're trying to deliver. So it's a lot of wasted time there, I think, in checking communications constantly. They also said that 40% of workers never got more than 30 minutes of focus time because they were constantly being interrupted. And I suppose that's kind of the positive of us moving from in the office environment to working from home, is you've got less interruption. So hopefully, naturally, we're already seeing that move from sort of presence to performance anyway. But there's only 30 minutes of focus time that they were actually getting. And they said that overall from the study, what they found was 2 hours and 48 minutes a day were the actual productive tasks. So just under 3 hours of actual productivity were coming through, which is, for me, was just astounding. When you think of a 7.5, 8 hour day, and you're only getting just under 3 hours of actual productive time. And that's a kind of a result of this always on mentality. So we have this, particularly now we've supplied everyone with laptops and mobile phones and the ability to connect through Slack and Zoom and all these different methods, which are brilliant. Don't get me wrong, they're absolutely brilliant. But do we risk actually all of our people feeling like they're always on and always having to communicate and keep on top of emails? Do they feel they have to respond straight away? Is that why they're checking Slack every 6 minutes? That kind of culture we create. So we have to be careful on that. And the downside of always being on is disruption to sleep. So you find that people end up working really late hours. They feel they have to answer emails at 10 o'clock if they come through at 10 o'clock from their managers. So they start to be in front of the screen constantly doing work, which disrupts their sleep, leads to stress and depression. They're not getting the work-life balance they need. And again, we have to be careful when we're leading from afar and when we're working remotely. We have to make sure we're checking on emotional well-being, like we discussed a couple of episodes ago, and just checking in on how our teams are doing. But also we get a bit of procrastination. So where they've not had much sleep, they're getting stressed and depressed, it can lead to procrastination as well. They've got so much to do that they focus on the things that aren't important. And if any of you have ever seen the kind of urgent, important time management matrix, where you kind of have that segment that says it's not urgent, it's not important, but they are the quick wins that you can get done quite quickly. So people focus on the little projects to fit in between their emails and their Slacks, rather than actually focusing on the bigger projects, which are going to drive productivity and add value to the business. So we need to be careful of that. And something that actually reminded me of this kind of always on culture was last year, about this time last year, I went round and did some observations with the regional sales managers to see how they were doing and what we could do to improve the way that they work and their efficiencies, and give them tools and any access they needed to stuff. And I've actually pulled in a slide that I presented back on this. Steve, I don't know if you've actually seen this before. You've got Targino there, who's one of our regional sales managers. But in line with this kind of always on culture, I actually did a summary of how much time they had to spend communicating with their teams. And I think this is really striking, actually. Their average team size was around about 46 at the time, which I don't think it's changed too much from them. They were getting between 150 and 200 emails every single day from people in their team. Gavin, who I actually spent some time with, he on his phone, he showed me his screen time from the day before, and he'd spent 5 hours on his phone in one day, just on his mobile phone. This is before he even gets his work done. This is just speaking to people. In a week, he'd had 2,994 WhatsApps. He'd had 200 applications come in for his team. So, of course, he's checking his funnels and trying to keep those flowing and going through. And he'd spent a total of 16 days in the field as well in that month. So if you think a typical working month is between, 20 and 23 days, he spent 16 of those out in the field. So on top of the extensive communication he has to do, on top of the days out in the field, he then only had best part of a week to actually get his team's productivity up and keep it going. And they're doing a great job of doing it. But we know that leads to burnout as well. So we have to give them the tools, and we have to give them the ability to manage that workload and manage that time, and just kind of work out where they can make efficiency gains. And that's the purpose today, is to talk about how do you guys do that, and how are you guys actually achieving success and driving your team forward, because all three of you do that on a day-to-day basis, and you manage things like this. I mean, this is a reality of Steve's team. This is something that we're gonna look at today. So just a couple of tips for those of you on the call on how to achieve the performance over presence, and we'll talk about this more in a minute, but a couple of things to think about is time chunking. So if you've never heard of this, it's about segmenting your day to have your time for communication, to have your time for productivity and projects, and do that not only for yourself, but for your team too. You can set an expectation with your team to say, actually, I just want you guys to be available on Slack and on emails in the morning between 9 and 11, and then in the afternoon again between 3 and 5, so I can contact you. Outside of that, you don't have to be readily available. You can be working on your pieces of work and what I need from you. Set an expectation for yourself, time chunk for yourself, and work out, right, I'm going to time slot these times in for me to work on projects. Actually schedule out time in your calendar as well. And I do that quite frequently. I'll just put in meetings on there, basically telling me what project I'm going to work on for that amount of time. So I make sure I switch everything else off. And the good thing about Slack and with emails, you can turn off the notifications, you can silence them as well, so you're not interrupted as you work. Set expectations for your team. I think that's a really important one to consider here. Be very clear from the offset what you expect from your team. So what work do you expect them to do? What do you expect them to do in terms of communication, and how quickly should they be responding to you, or how quickly should they be answering tickets and that kind of thing. Just being very clear with the expectations. So it's the what and the when, and then a little bit of the how. I talked last week about you want to tell your team what, but not necessarily how to do it, just purely because you want to give them that autonomy. So how, as in how do you want to communicate, and how you actually want them to do the work. Of course, coach them, guide them and stuff, but give them a little bit of autonomy while they're working from home as well, and give them that trust. Check in with your team, and I've written there person first, work second. So we talked about that before. Just checking in with them and how they're doing, how's their weekend been, how are they coping with the workload, how's everything going, and then go into the projects, right? So where have you got to with this project? What do we need to do? Are there any blockers? That kind of thing. Trust, like we said, give autonomy to them. You've got to trust them when you're working from afar. You're going to have to, even if you're not someone to trust that easily. It's really important that you give them that opportunity. And when they're working remotely, they need to know that you trust that they're doing their job well. And the final thing is listen to feedback. So it's crucial when you're doing all of this that you're listening to your team, and not only in checking in with them and asking how they are, but use things like Office Vibe. Office Vibe is great because it's got some really honest feedback on there on how they're coping with lockdown, how they're coping with workload, how they're coping with expectations. If you want to find specifically something around performance and how they're managing workload, do a bespoke survey on Office Vibe as well. You've all got that access where you can send out surveys to your team and it will come back anonymously as well. So just a couple of tools before we move into the panel. You all use them anyway, but just to draw your attention, these are really great for driving productivity. So Slack and WhatsApp are great for team communications, checking in on what work's been done, working as a team for that. A lot of the time when people aren't in the office, they miss being able to bounce off their team members to check in where things are and what's going on. So keep them up to date. Use these channels to drive that as well. If you haven't got a team Slack channel, make a team Slack channel. Give them an opportunity to do that and have it a bit, not just work, again, person first. So check in, how's it going? How's your day? Show us where you're working. What's your office like? What's your pet's name? That kind of stuff. Google Drive is brilliant, obviously, for shared documents. Again, if you haven't got one, have a shared drive so you can all put the work that you're actually doing in there, any documentation on how to do things. It's a really great tool for you actually driving productivity and seeing how everyone's doing. Zoom, like we're doing now, check in, visuals are nice. It's nice to have more than just a phone call. Be wary of Zoom burnout. We talked about that last week as well. Don't book in a Zoom for the sake of booking in a Zoom, but have that ability to have those visuals and those face-to-faces as well. Office Vibe, like I said, if you don't regularly check it, get into the habit of checking the feedback from your team. There can be some real good sort of golden nuggets in there that will really help you shape what you're doing with your team as well. And then lastly, Trello. It's not a company tool necessarily. I know a lot of people in the company use it, but it's a free tool and it's for team and project management. And it allows you to track what everyone's doing in your team. So my team uses it when we're doing big projects. We put all our cards on there. Everyone can have visibility of who's working on what. You can own a card, you can put your updates, you can attach docs to it. So it's a really great way of managing workloads as well. Good, so that's all I've got to say for that piece. Like I said, today is around how do we kind of move away from just being present and actually have performance from it as well as productivity. So on that note, we're going to go into our panel discussion. So I'm just going to stop sharing the screen so we can see everyone. So to set the scene and to give everyone context, can you all tell us what changes have happened to your team set up since March in terms of furloughs? I know Bev, you touched on it, so we'll start with you, Bev, but in terms of furloughs and people still working, and did you see any initial changes to productivity as well when you first switched over?
I think what was really good was we all moved really quickly when the noise started around COVID, and we tested a group of 10 agents working from home, mainly to see if the agents could actually get logged on and actually make and take calls. And then over the following weeks, we tested every agent and had the kit delivered and ordered laptops so they could all work from home. I think we recognised really quickly that with the help from IT, HR, training, etc., that it was actually going to work and we could continue to take and make calls without any disruption to customers. And we haven't actually seen any drop-off in productivity, thanks to every person who's embraced the change in Hull. In fact, I would go as far as saying productivity is maintained and has been really healthy.
That's amazing, and kudos to them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Okay, Steve, in terms of your team, how did your furloughs look, and has there been any changes, big changes for you?
Yeah, so it's been a very eventful couple of months. From my 10 RSMs, 8 have been placed in furlough, 2 on. I put 1 RSM in charge of the North and Ireland, it was Brigitte, and the other in charge of the South, which was Matt. So all basically the North and Ireland sellers then reported into Brigitte, and the same obviously for Matt in the South. And the transition was very easy and straightforward, because all the RSMs and literally know all the other sellers and every other team. So that was helpful. Our 250 sellers are self-employed, so they don't go to furlough, they're still active. All of the teleappointing team and the management in there, they were placed into to furlough, no problems there. Sales support, everyone went into furlough except 4. We initially started with 2, but we bought two back. In regards to productivity, well, my core business is sales. 90% of businesses today are closed, and sellers are literally in lockdown in their house and unable to leave. So I was expecting sales to literally go close to 0. But to my amazement, in April we did 970 sales of 1.2 million worth of LTR. Now that is 50% less than what we would usually do, but it's the fact that, considering 90% of businesses are closed and sellers can't leave their house, I thought that was fantastic. And the productivity of the RSMs, they've been working day and night and helping all the extra sellers. At the start, we only had 2 sales support working, but because the sales were coming in at a fast rate, we had to bring 2 more out of furloughs. So the work rate and productivity for those that have been working has been fantastic. So overall, considering the circumstances, productivity has been high and very healthy.
Yeah, that's incredible, like you said, for you to expect it to be so low and for us to have to bring people out of furlough just to manage the demand is great. What do you, in terms of your leadership, I suppose, then with Steve, with that, how have you kind of adapted to keeping that productivity with just having 2 RSMs as well?
Well, I think we're in a new world now, and the communication sort of tools that we can use now. It was the productivity was always going to be high because I've got a high sort of, I speak to my RSMs probably 20, 30 times a day, just through all different sorts of messages. So the communications was always there. And we've now increased more webinars. We're doing more training classes. Every other day we've got all the sales force coming into some sort of webinar just to keep that level of engagement high. And because of what's coming in the next sort of month, that sort of there's a lot of excitement in the air. So we've almost hooked all the sellers in by talking about what's coming rather than concentrating on today, and we've been doing that through all the webinars and sort of group chats that we're doing.
Okay, good. Yeah, so it's creating the vision for them and keeping them striving forward is the key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Okay, cool. And over to you, Heena. How about you? What's happened since you went on lockdown?
What hasn't happened? I echo Steve. It's been a really interesting time. I've never seen it. Obviously, we've never seen anything like this. So since lockdown was announced in March, my team have had to pivot, doing their usual, business as usual, as much as they can. But as well as that, they've been having to sell business funding right back. They've been supporting the CS teams and working their leads, learning new systems, and then remote working on top of that, which they don't do as a whole. So that was before we furloughed everyone. Since we furloughed everyone, we went from 25 direct reports to 3, doing 5 people's roles. So we've had really outstanding productivity. They've had to take on different roles. They've completed, all tasks that have been asked of them. And they've had to do this in an agile way. So even though, like I said, the majority of our business comes from, what is happening in the economy, and obviously the economy is not as we know it, I would still say that the productivity, obviously I can't compare it to how it was before, but I would say the productivity has not decreased in what they're doing. Yeah, it's been really, really positive.
That's good. Yeah, I think you're right in saying that. Adapting to take on 5 people's roles is quite a feat, and I think that in itself is driving forward because they just naturally stand up, don't they, and take on and carry on. And that again, that goes to trust. You trusting them to do their jobs and to do it well and to take on, which is good. Okay, so Steve, over to you again. So you've always led sales teams remotely. You've got quite a track record of improving sales performance. You talked at the beginning about how you fight over department after department, and each one you kind of proved that you're driving forward. So how do you do it? What's the secret to your success? What's the first thing you do when you go into a new team or a new department? How do you kind of drive that forward? going as well? Because your team increased month on month.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said earlier, I've got 300 people in my team. 250 of them are self-employed and 50 are employed. So how I manage self-employed people and employed people are actually exactly the same. I mean, most people would think you would need to manage them differently, but that's not the case with me. I'm more of a sort of a hearts and minds manager. I mean, rather than micromanaging and hitting them with the stick. It doesn't matter whether people are employed, self-employed, or contractor. I mean, they're all human beings at the end of the day, and everyone's got a talent. So obviously, it's the job of myself to bring the talent out of these guys. So how do I do that? Well, it's my belief that basically everybody's got sort of 3 buttons that that you want to press with them, basically, and that's progress, stroke opportunity, money, and a sense of belonging. So I'll take you through these 3. So the first thing I do when I start a team or take over a team is talk about the bigger picture. Meaning, from day one, I would explain to them my vision, explaining that I want to take this team to the very top of success and to break records and be the best. But then I talk about the opportunities that will open up for them if we reach these levels. I always aim to help my people build their vision and their ambition. I always ask them how far they want to go. So what I do is I get them to build a 3-step plan, basically a roadmap of how they will get to where they are today, to where they want to where they want to go. And I think it's important to immediately start to get them sort of thinking big and how to aim high, because if people don't have any vision or ambition, they will always work bare minimum. And Payment Sense is actually a great example of the opportunity. In other words, the model that we've got. Because if you look at anyone, if you look at most managers in the company in Payment Sense, they were promoted internally to that position. Yes, of course, there was a lot of managers brought into the business, but the majority of people who have been promoted up to that position, I started as an RSM, and today I'm ahead. Heena, you guys were promoted up. I believe 4 or 5 of the execs were promoted up to that position, and 9 out of my 10 RSMs actually started as a seller, and now today are an RSM. So this company is the perfect example of opportunity and of promotions internally. So the first button with my staff is to get them to start thinking of where you want to go. Aim high, plan your 3-step plan, and get working on it and making that happen. So that's the first button. Second button is obviously money. Again, it's related to the 3-step plan. Start achieving your 3-step plan, and then I will put some sort of financial plan in place so that you will get to make more money. With the sellers, this is why I launched the 3 communities. So they can progress through it and obviously make more money as they go along. So obviously the second button is money. And the third button is sense of belonging. And I think this is probably the most important one, to create that where they belong to something and that create that sort of family-like atmosphere. And for teams or departments to perform as one team, there has to be team chemistry. And I'm always talking about that. I'm always talking about, as a team, let's break the next record. If we break a record together as a team, we'll do something pretty cool and pretty exciting, monthly incentives in place, that where if we hit something, then we do something pretty cool. So I took them all to we took them all to Rio there in February, and building team chemistry is very important, and getting everyone pushing towards that same goal, and just that sense of belonging. If you records. So I think as a manager, that I know that if I can hit all three of those buttons with people in my team, that very quickly a high-performing team will come together, which is what we've got today.
Yeah, and I think that's a great plan. I think there's three very clear steps that anyone could do, whether you're in sales or not. It's like you said, it's understanding what the goal is, understanding what their goal is. So if that's money for sales, great. If it's for another business where it's more about personal development, what's their motivator? How do you actually reward success as well? What does success look like, and how do you actually get there? And then, like you said, the vision. What is it?
But recognition is very important too. You mean it's just that pat in the back can go a long way. And I make sure my month-end reports I do every month that people get recognized in public, and we do awards. I make sure that I give a shout out to whoever's achieved something that month. So I think if you put all of those things together, that very quickly you'll win the hearts and minds of people. And if you win hearts and minds of people, then you can give people the freedom to actually go and work without you having to micromanage them. And if you give people the freedom and let them fly, you'll find that they'll stick. They'll not leave you. They'll stick around. They'll follow you into battle, and they'll perform every single month. And then you've built yourself a well-oiled engine.
Yeah, agree. 100% agree. I think too quickly, people managers can be quick to point out the bad stuff, but not recognise and acknowledge the good stuff, and it makes people feel better.
Absolutely.
Good. Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so Bev, obviously we talked about your team that furloughed and still got going, and then how you piloted that kind of change and making sure you kept up productivity. But as a leader yourself and leading other managers as well, how did your leadership style change, if at all, when you shifted from working in the office with your team to working from home?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question, because I think to an extent, me and my team have almost had to sort of reinvent ourselves by working personally on how I communicate with the team. I think I've definitely become more focused on people's well-being. It's a difficult time working at home, and I think you're isolated. Although we've got all these great tools, that human interaction piece is missing somewhat. So I'm really sort of conscious that we have to look after people, especially their mental health. And I've ensured that me and the team have clear goals, and we communicate really clearly. And I guess I've really relied more on the support from my team, my team managers, and sort of levering them and using their individual skills and collective strengths to support each other. So, yeah, I think it's been a really sort of tough time, but one of which has been really an eye-opener for me, because I've had to change my management style and be a bit more patient with people as well, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to acknowledge, isn't it? You do have to be self-aware as well of what you're doing. And the fact there that you said what your strengths are in the team, and how do you recognise your team collectively, not just...
Yeah. I mean, I've got a really great second in command, which is Jodie, and I'm really, happy to, if I have time off. I had a couple of days off last week, and I knew that Jodie would keep everything going, and everybody in my team has got a specific strength that I know I can call on to make sure that we continue to be, in control of our service levels, in control of our people, but at the same time we work well as a team, and I really guess sort of understand each other inside and out. Mm-hmm.
That makes 100% sense, and making sure that you've got underneath you as well, that building from below. What the strong structure Thank you, Heena. So have you changes in your leadership style and how you kind of approach managing the team?
Yeah, I echo Bev on this one as well. So I've really made a conscious effort to over communicate with my team. So even though when we were in the office, you have a little chat across the desk, and it can be casual, and there might be more, naturally there'll be more people wanting to come and speak to you. But now with remote working, I've made a real effort to actually reach out to everybody individually, and also, have daily catch-ups with them all. they're like this, we're not used to remote working, and like there's been a lot of period of uncertainty. So I'm really making an effort just to keep everyone updated, keep them engaged, talk to them about the future of payment sense and about Superplay. So I'd say my leadership style has naturally become even more democratic, and I'm having to pay more attention to supporting their emotional needs as well, because of maybe the isolation, and also just because of all the changes as well with all of this. So yeah, definitely more democratic. I'd say the style of my leadership has changed.
I think you're right. I think you have to be very emotional needs of the teams at the moment, as well as all of us. Because you're right, when you're in the office, you can read people and see if someone's upset. Not in front of them, it's hard to tell that. Okay, so sorry, Heena as well. So one of the things you've also got to be aware of is kind of tools for productivity. So I showed some examples of tools earlier, but one of the things we have to kind of avoid is this body in seat mentality. And what I talked about at the beginning of just being present, meaningful work. So kind of approaching that, the work that you're doing is important, and it's adding forward.
I don't know if anyone's, but I feel like you're breaking up quite a lot. Can you guys?
Yeah, I'm
really struggling to hear you.
It's really breaking up.
It could be my. Can everyone just we're not speaking mute as well, so we've got a clear. Perfect. Okay, so hopefully that's a little bit better.
That's better.
Good. Okay, so yeah, I was just saying at the beginning we talked about this whole kind of concept of body in seat, and this whole thing of people feeling they just need to be present in front of their screen and working for the full 8 hours. But how are you managing with your team to make sure that it's not that, and that it's meaningful work that they're doing? They're obviously, like you said at the beginning, doing 5 people's jobs. How do you make sure that it's the right stuff and that it's adding value, really?
So I really believe now, this has really opened my eyes, and I believe that not micromanaging, like Steve has said earlier, building genuine trust, not just saying it, but actually having genuine trust in my team, taking a real interest in their day, speaking about their challenges, helping solve any issues, really gives you a real insight into the work that they're doing organically without having to, micromanage them, lose trust in them, and, believe in them. So when you take a natural interest in what they are doing, you will naturally know what's been done organically. So, you realize they're just, not a body in the seat, and they are actually doing meaningful work.
Good. And you said there, like, it's really changed your eyes. Do you think this is going to change when you go back into the office now with managing them as well?
Yeah, it's definitely made me be a lot more of a personal manager, and it's really helped me look at them as a person. Not that I didn't before, but now even more so. It's really emphasized the importance of that. Like you said, person first, work afterwards, and you get results that way.
Exactly. Good. All right, thank you for that. And Bev, so in terms of body and seat mentality, how are you following the work? Because I suppose you're driven a lot by films and tickets and things. So how do you adapt to that?
Yeah, I think I'm really lucky to have a good planning analyst, and that person can provide me with schedules for the teams. For every colleague that I have in customer service. And what that does is enables me to understand, have I got the right number of people to take and make calls and answer emails from customers? As well as this, what I think works really well for me is that we have regular meetings with the team, my team, to review the performance throughout the day. And we've got a really good productivity tool which measures agents' time in a productive state, i.e. the time that they're taking and making calls to customers, compared to the time that they're not in a productive state. And that could be something like an after-call work or an away state on the NICE telephone system. So my first 9:30 meeting with the team is to review what we did the day before and what we need to do for the rest of the day, addressing any hotspots or anything that may impact on SLA. And we often get a few curveballs in customer service. Things happen that we're not expecting, and that's really difficult to plan. to those curveballs. But if there are any issues, we can decide what we need to do, and that might be we pull meetings, we change training, or even, you know, we ask people to work a little bit sort of differently so we can impact and make sure that we are hitting the targets that we need to do to help customers.
So it's constant communication and real time as well, so being able to see it constantly and in real time rather than wait until the end of the day for the feedback. Good. Okay. So Steve, we talk a lot about our team being more productive and how we lead them to be more productive. But how about, like, you are down to a reduced amount of regional sales managers. You are down to a reduced amount of sales, but not so much as you've proven this month. But how are you making sure you're working smart and not working hard to kind of pick up that down?
Sheila, you broke up. I couldn't understand most of that. Just repeat it, please.
I'll just repeat that. So I was just saying that obviously at the moment where you've got a reduced management team, you've got reduced people, and obviously there has been a slight impact on sales, although not great because you guys have been doing really well. But how are you making sure that you as a leader are working smart and not hard, and that you're managing your time and your productivity levels yourself?
Well, I mean, it's basically there's two objectives here. I've broken it down. I mean, I've sort of delegated to the RSMs, and they know themselves anyway. They're concentrating on what's happening today. In other words, helping the sellers with the day-to-day going on and sharing out the leads, helping them with their errors, and basically the day-to-day operations of sales today. So I've left that basically to them. I mean, really what I'm concentrating on is controlling the overall sort of morale and building the vision for the future. So my days basically are built up now of speaking to people with marketing, yourself, Steve, and really thinking about sort of building sort of the future, which is super pay on the 1st of June. So, I mean, I'm just making sure that, I mean, I have got 4 or 5 Zoom calls every single day. So really, I'm just sort of concentrating on sort of really the next month and how we're going to build up the momentum and super pay. So I'm just really making sure that I'm speaking to the right people at head office about the right matters. I speak to Steve Jason basically every day. I speak to yourself more or less every day, Hugo every day, just so that we get this launch very super smooth. And then every other day, I'm probably dipping into the sellers just in making sure that engagement is high. So I'm just making sure I've got that healthy balance of everything, of obviously and tapping into the RSMs, making sure that the day-to-day everything's okay, how's the morale, have we got control of it, but also touching base with head office to make sure that the next month is going to be super smooth. So I'm trying to stay 2 steps ahead of where everybody is today, just making sure that we don't fall at the last hurdle.
Yeah, and I think that's the big difference between sort of manager and leader, isn't it? The managers can manage, they can keep the day-to-day going. You need to be pushing forward and working on that. So it's a delegation, really.
Yeah.
Bev, same question to you. So how are you making sure that, I mean, you've got 9 departments, you said, so you've got a lot of different sub-teams working on different things. Well, 2 questions, I suppose. One, how are you making sure that you're working smart, not hard, but also how are you making sure your teams do and that there's no burnout within the teams as well?
Yeah, sorry. I think it's all down to really good communication and knowing your people's strengths, who's particularly strong at one area of the business, and really just making sure that we keep everybody, you know, well communicated. We have a little update that goes out first thing every morning. It's called Jules' Espresso, and it gives all of the teams some really important updates for that day. And things that they need to focus on so that we can keep sure that we're keeping everything sort of stable. And it's a really good way as well of making sure people that they are recognised and appreciated. And I think one of the things that I've really learned through this whole COVID experience is that we have to make sure that we keep a really sort of tight rein on appreciating our people and making sure that we say thanks where it's due, because those small tokens go a long way for people.
I think you're right, and constant communication seems to be a running theme with a lot of the things we're talking about, and that kind of humane approach, making sure you're updating them, keeping them in the loop, bringing them together as a team, that kind of thing is super important. Okay, Heena, so we know that obviously with productivity comes things like inflation and like motivation as well, which we kind of briefly touched upon. You've obviously got a large portion of your department on furlough, and then you've got some who are still working. So how are you keeping your teams motivated at the moment, and how are you keeping both of them, those on furlough as well, and keeping them engaged in the business versus people who are still working?
So I think, like you just said, communication, it's going to come up in probably every question that we've, every point that we've brought up. So yeah, communication, having daily catch-ups with the team that I have, the skeleton team that I have running the department right now, as a team, and also individually, keeping it fun as well. So, just maybe getting work out the way, really quickly on our daily calls, but then having some kind of theme, getting them to host, getting them to be accountable for creating the culture as well, and getting them excited, getting them to think that, what can I do for the next meeting? Also, on the work side, encouraging to do online training, the online courses, encouraging them to go to the webinars and be engaged with work, and getting them excited about super pay and talking about the future of payment sense. While they're at home, so the furlough team, we speak once a week. They take turns in hosting a meeting. And then, we talk about super pay and what's going to happen when they come back to work. So they realize that obviously this is not forever. And when we do go back, it's going to be exciting. We're going to move into the new building. We're going to have a new product to sell. And, it's going to be, the new world is going to be even more exciting. Yeah.
Good. Okay. And can you share a couple of examples of some of the sort of team meetings that you've been doing that are a bit off work topic and more for fun, just so some of our guys can get some.
So we've had some really funny ones. So we've had a cocktail, like everyone's had to make a cocktail, which sounds like, oh, okay. But then they've really gone to town, they've put their background on, and they've all named it like a lockdown theme, like lockdown ginger, or, quarantine, everyone has a quarantini. So yeah, we've had like fun cocktail themes, shirts. Everyone's had to wear an interesting shirt like I have today, but maybe even louder. So everyone has a shirt and we all have a laugh about it. Obviously we do like the quizzes, two truths and a lie, or two lies and a truth. Yeah, just loads of different games rather than just like the standard pub quiz. Just try to do something a little bit more creative and fun, and people bring on their babies and their pets, or show and tell. Yes, we have loads of different, they're really creative and they've really surprised me. They've been really engaged, which has been really nice.
Yeah, and I think that's important, isn't it? Like we said, it's person first mentality, and it's keeping the teaming culture as well, because it's stuff they would do perhaps outside of work together, and bringing that in is nice. Cool, thanks for sharing. Okay, so I'm just going to come to the last question now. We've got 10 minutes to go, and get you all to answer this. And then if anyone's got any questions, by all means, pop them into the chat box at the bottom, and the team can answer them afterwards. But my final question to each of you, and we'll start with you, Steve, is if you had to give one piece of advice to our leaders struggling with driving productivity in their teams, what would your one piece of advice be for them?
Probably similar to how I answered the question earlier, is find out exactly what your people's buttons are. And you'll probably find that they are usually progression. People want progression, they want opportunity. So sit down with them and ask them how far do they want to go, and then get them to build a 3-step plan on how they're going to get there. And then it's up to them to increase productivity to hit that plan. If they hit it, then help them progress. Help them, give them opportunities of where they can go further in the company. So that's one. The second, obviously, the money again. Get in their 3-step plan. I've put something in place where if they can hit that, then they can make more money. Bonuses. I know every department, it's different how the bonus structure works, but help them make more money. And 3, which is the important one, is build some chemistry in your team. Get them working all together as one team. Set monthly incentives where if they hit goal or target, you can take them on a night out. Talk about how you want your team to be the best team in the company. Get them fired up. And if they achieve it, and then reward them. And if you do all that, you'll find that the passion and chemistry, team chemistry, will come, and that will lead to higher productivity.
Yeah, I think that's a really good method to use as well. Okay, Bev, your piece of advice.
Yeah, so I think people working from home, I think they feel a little bit disconnected and quite lonely sometimes, and that can lower productivity and indeed, I think, engagement. So I think for me, my advice under these circumstances, I think it's tempting to become exclusively task focused, if you see what I mean. And I think to address that, we need to take time for personal interaction with our people. And I think that's more important than ever now during the crisis that we're in. And I guess it's all around making sure that you're checking in with everybody regularly. You're asking for feedback and you're giving feedback as well. Just because we're working at home doesn't mean to say we have to change how we work. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Great, thank you. And you're right. Giving feedback is still as important because that helps them mentally to improve.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. And last is Heena. So what would be your piece of advice?
I'm going to echo what I've said earlier as well. So what I found is that having like regular catch-ups, regular communication, it encourages accountability, and the natural outcome of that is productivity. And I think it's really good opportunity for those who are still working to really step up, to really develop in their roles as well, and to be recognized as well. So I think that will really motivate them to be productive when they see that, this is my time to shine, really. And also just for me, just showing a genuine interest in them just makes them want to work and makes them want to be, oh, do you know what I did? I solved this problem with this partner that called me, and I brought on 4 new partners, and I'm not a PDM. So yeah, it's their time to shine, really, and just encouraging that and getting it out of them, which it's been a really good exercise.
Yeah, and I think you're right, a genuine interest, and that's the key word, isn't it? Actually being interested in what your people do, because that helps you read their strengths as well, and that helps you move them forward by understanding their triggers. Like Steve said, that's the key thing, understand what makes them tick. Good. Okay, thank you guys for a really insightful session. I'm just going to link to a couple of resources if people are interested in learning a bit more around this topic. There's a really good TED Talks by Nicholas Bloom. He talks about, it's called Go Ahead, Tell Your Boss You're Working From Home, but it talks about that shift of mentality to working remotely and how you as a person can be more productive. As always, plug in LinkedIn Learning. There's lots of courses on there. There's a brilliant one on managing performance, which talks about this and how to lead your teams through it. There's all sorts of topics on there, and I'm going to be collating a Leadership Lounge course soon as well. And then the final thing is, if you want to know a bit more about motivating people and what makes people tick, there's a really great book called Drive by Dan Pink, which talks about what motivates us and how to drive motivation as well. Special thank you to all of our panelists today. They've been brilliant. Before we wrap up, I just want to see, there isn't any chats in the box now. We've got 5 minutes, but is there any questions from anyone or anything anyone would like to ask any of the panelists at all? Just give it a couple of minutes or so. No, I don't think there's anything from me. Okay, if there are any questions, guys, feel free to reach out to me or to any of our panelists today to ask them a bit more about it. But very, very special thanks to these guys for a great discussion and a great topic to talk about and take away and action. Loads of actions came from today as well. So thank you, guys. Have a lovely day and enjoy the recording afterwards.
Thanks, guys.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye, guys.